For those who might have listened or participated in last year's State of the Research Address, I'm following sort of the same outline and broad themes. And what I want to do is for everyone cover a little bit of a year in review, how we did last year in fiscal year 22, and then Val teed it up perfectly. Really talk about what's next, and for everyone, what are some of the challenges we're going to face? We have been on a meteoric rise, as you'll soon see in our research, but there's a lot of challenges ahead for us. And so what can we do? What should we collectively be doing to think about those challenges, head off those challenges, and where are really the opportunity spaces that we have, given what the future looks like? So, let's see if I can do this right. By the numbers. First off, everyone out there in Zoom land and everyone that is here in the room at the college level, the deans, you should all give yourselves a nice pat on the back. Last year was a record-breaking level for UC, over 268 million in awards. It's an anomaly, as I will talk about in a second. But you can see in terms of how many awards we received, that's one of the highest numbers ever. The number of investigators was up over 10% from the year before, which is important. That means we're growing our research base and we have more people being successful. And what I like to say when I talk, especially with outside audiences, about what this chart represents is keep in mind, everybody who is submitting proposal is competing against someone else. It's very rare that you get to submit a proposal and you're the only applicant and then they turn around and give you funding. That would be great for all of us who do research. It doesn't work like that. You're competing against everybody else, sometimes just in the US, sometimes globally for those funding. That signifies how competitive our faculty are in their ability to compete and win these awards. And that's what I think really is a testament to the deans and what has been done at the college level to promote and also support how to be more successful at going after these awards. Our number of sponsors has also gone up. Again, anytime we can broaden what we're doing at the university, I think that's a very good thing to look forward to. You can see the college breakdown here. One thing I do want to point out, and I'm going to come back to, if we look at our current year to date over last year's awards, we are actually running ahead in terms of the total number and total amount of proposals being submitted. Again, those of you at the college level understand, lots of people out there working hard to put those proposals together and put them in. That takes a lot of time and effort. Our awards to date are running behind where we were last year, but we're still in an area and on a trajectory that is where we need to be as a university as part of the president's and our Research 2030 goals to grow our impact as a Research One university. The other important news for us is what are we spending our money on in terms of research? And so again, this has been announced before, but just to recapitulate, we had our first year over $600 million in research expenditures for UC and UC affiliates. A little over half of that came from UC. The remainder came from our affiliates, which are primarily Cincinnati Children's, but also includes the VA and the work that goes through UCRI as well. You can see that of our research expenditures, our total at UC is roughly half of that from federal sources. And then about a third of what we support is institutional support. And one of the questions I get is, what is institutional support? Is that the CFO handing out money? Actually, we all wish the CFO would do that, but this institutional support comes in large part by the work of our graduate students. So the graduate students who are supported locally count towards this total. And that's important, and I know Rosemarie has big goals and ambitious goals for what we need to do in terms of supporting and growing our graduate student population. And if you hadn't seen the Provost message about graduate students before break, I urge you to go back and look at that. It's a well-written, as all of his are. You make the rest of us, we can't compete against your writing, Val. But it's a great story for us to understand, because the graduate students are often really at the front lines of doing research in the vast majority of our colleges. So you can see how that breaks down. This is important for us. It's important, and it's a metric we keep track of at the top administrative levels, is what are our research expenditures, because that directly translates into how our ranking is by the NSF. So the NSF HERD rankings are directly taken from that number. They don't include all the other important things, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those other measures of success as a research one here in a second. But this is important for us as we seek to reach our goal of being a top 25 university. I want to point out, for folks who are interested, our research budget, thanks to the generous support of the president, the CFO, the provost, continues to grow. You can see we have growth in both our general funds budget, our startup budget, as well as the research support. There's that top part, that other blue area to that. Primarily, we received a one-time investment through Jobs Ohio that was spread out over 3 years. So we'll see that fall away, but we're continuing to make more and more investments in the overall research budget for the university. And I'll point out that almost half of what we take in the Office of Research, we just turn around and transfer out to the colleges. So you can see what we transferred out last year in terms of the startup spending that went to the colleges to help support their hires, what we give out in internal grants and awards. It's one of our big programs that we've really invested in, both our internal programs that run annually, as well as Research 2030 awards that we're now doing as part of our strategic initiative in the Office of Research. You see some other, as well as a little bit of cost share support. I will highlight that we do have funds available for cost share when it's required, and there's a process that everyone can follow. So that number is low compared to what we have budgeted, and it really depends on what we're successful and requires a mandatory cost share, not an optional cost share, but a mandatory cost share from the funder. So those are the numbers. So recapitulation of what happened last year, what our budget looked like. I just want to move forward now. Remind everybody, we have Research 2030. That's our strategic plan for research over the next 10 years here at UC. We have two big objectives and then our goals behind it. You heard these words when the provost spoke: national prominence and research with impact. That has been what we've been focused on with Research 2030. What we're shooting for is to be recognized as a top 25 public research institution. We're just outside of the top 30 right now. And I will point out, since we do have a board member here, this was the board challenging us to become a top 25 university when this was being set up. And we certainly want to be recognized, making a difference in this region, making a difference in this state, making a difference nationally and across the globe. And one of the things you'll see if you walk out this door, for those of you who are in the room and out past the front as you exit, you'll see solving problems that matter. That's part of the tagline of the Digital Futures building, but it really speaks to research with impact here at the university. What we've been focused on then for the first in the top 25 is recruit and retain talent. We need new and more talent. That is talent at all levels: faculty, students, and our staff. Our research staff and staff that support all the research activities sometimes go under the radar, and it's one of the things we've tried to promote in the Office of Research, is recognizing those staff. And in fact, I'll just point out that Friday of this week, the provost and I reconvene, and we will be making awards that were nominated by the deans to be for faculty excellence, as well as peer-to-peer faculty research mentoring. And then the Office of Research gives 3 awards, our core value awards, that are going to staff members who are thanking those staff members for all they've done to support research here at the university. And then we're also focused with Research 2030, how do we build our research infrastructure, as well as cultivate and grow programs of excellence. There we go. And then within our other objective, research with impact, it's really been, again, the provost mentioned it, this next lives here. In our case, in the research office, it's focused on the urban futures pathway. Well, we're also rethinking the where. That goes to what the provost said. Where does UC conduct research? It should be international in scope and reach. And that is why we have started this initiative in partnership with the UC International Office in Raj, in putting a person over there supported by the Office of Research who can help facilitate that kind of international reach to our research program. And then our Coalition for Change is really how do we get faculty out in front as thought leaders. One of the examples of that is our Digital Futures Flashpoint series. And so I'll make a plug. Tomorrow at 12:30, there will be the last Flashpoint series panel of our academic year that will feature the president and Mark Kwame, who is former head of Jobs Ohio and is a venture capitalist. And they're going to be talking about the bioscience and bioeconomy. But we will also have faculty that are present at that presentation who are thought leaders here at the university to help drive conversation with our community. If you want to know more about the Flashpoint series, just go to the Office of Research website and you can find the information there. So let me talk briefly about the three major initiatives that are part of Next Lives Here. Digital Futures. For those of you who are in the room, you are in Digital Futures. For those who are not aware, Digital Futures has been a big emphasis since 2018. Just some updates. When we opened Digital Futures back in the fall, September was our official grand opening, but we had moved folks in. We had about 20 different labs set up with a number of community partners. We've now expanded additional labs, so we have 24 labs that are now part of this building with still room to grow, and we're doing that strategically in partnership with particular colleges and deans to help them recruit top talent from outside the university to come into this building. But one of the things that makes Digital Futures unique amongst sort of research buildings is the fact that we have 4 different nonprofit partners that are also in the building, one of which, Elements, actually has their own lab and they do their own work in collaboration with faculty and others here at the university. I can't tell you, if you need to know, Tony Almaguer can give you all the details, how many people have been through the building, how many events have been hosted, but this building is open to the UC community. So if you're thinking about having an event, if you're having a scientific workshop, conference, or any other type of academic event, you're welcome to use the space out here if it's available and if it fits the needs. And we've hosted many different academic activities here in the building as well as with our community partners. I think the last thing I will say about Digital Futures and our expectations is this is something that we really expect our faculty that are part of this space to really be pushing the boundaries. So there's this high risk, high reward aspect to being out here. Interdisciplinary teams have to have a clear focus on what is their problem, who are they going to be able to partner with, and what makes that different and what pushes us beyond. And so we go through a pretty rigorous process. If you talk to anyone who's in the building, we've already done a mid-year review process with them to discuss where they are, where they're heading, how can we help, what are the barriers to their success. And we expect more of that to happen, not just in this building, but throughout the campus as we take this model and start to expand beyond it. The provost mentioned there are 2 new strategic initiatives under the Urban Futures Pathway. President Pinto's already announced those. Biosciences and the bioeconomy is one. I just want to give a brief high-level overview of what this is going to focus on. So we've really separated that into 2 components. The biosciences is really how do we take all our strengths that we have here at the university across not just the Academic Health Center, but also our other campuses and bring those together in interdisciplinary, collaborative fashion to tackle challenging problems that are out there in the biosciences community. In fact, the federal government, NIH, depending on how you want to look at it, has kicked off a new initiative with ARPA-H, built off the DARPA model. And ARPA-H is focused on healthcare, but it's only going to be successful if we can pull teams who have many different backgrounds together to work. So that's part of what we're working on in bioscience and bioeconomy, or in the bioscience piece of that. The bioeconomy is really sustainability. So that's really looking about what can we do as a university to build up new centers of excellence around things such as water research, such as energy research. We have a lot of great things going on, especially on the West Campus between arts and sciences and engineering, but there's more opportunity there to bring others in, build on top of that. So that will be a focus in this particular initiative. And then society and culture. This is one where we were really focused on understanding what are our strengths and how can we build on our strengths in non-STEM areas. And so this is going to be a new initiative that's really looking, again, to invest in non-STEM areas. But one of the things we're particularly focused upon, and I really appreciate the partnership with the provost here, is how do we start to keep track, measure, and then develop the programming to support our faculty receiving top level awards. And so thanks to Val, working with Val, we now have at the presidential level, one of our key indicators of success is going to be our faculty awards. And we will be developing programming around that to support at the college level, the nominations, and getting our faculty onto the top level of awards in different disciplines. We have some targeted ones, but this is really about investing across the board in faculty with a particular emphasis. We have so many great faculty in non-STEM areas that how can we build them up and push them forward, as well as doing some other strategic recruitment in the non-STEM fields. So for both of these initiatives, stay tuned. There'll be more to come from the provost and I on where we're going and what sorts of particular investments will be made. I will end this part with just a quick summary on the investments that have been made to date. So one of the things we did when we were talking about Research 2030 is we set out a plan with the then CFO, Bob Ombach, that we would be making at least $100 million investment in research over 10 years. We've been at it now for 3 years. We're at a little over 26 million, so we're on that pace. I will note that the research infrastructure investments that have been made do not include what the institution is covering for the Digital Futures facility, but that investment is actually being paid out of research because the research F&A that goes to the general fund is covering that expense, so it's not being taken out of anybody's budget. So these are new additional investments that have been made, and then some are then recurring year after year. A couple of quick examples. With working with Faculty Senate 2 years ago, we created 2 new awards to give out, internal awards. One is for our young faculty, the URC Faculty Scholars. We're now into our 3rd year. Our latest cohort was just identified. We haven't made that public yet, but we're about to. So those are 8 scholars from across the university who are at the early career stage. And then we also created and have been investing in our Faculty Pivot URC Award, and that's for mid-career faculty who are looking to move into a new area for them. And so that competition, I think, is almost due for applications or will close very shortly, and we'll be announcing that 3rd cohort as well. And then, keeps moving the mouse. I want to close by thanking everybody who's involved in our research enterprise. That runs the gamut. You can see a lot of work is done at the college level. With our decentralized approach to grant support, we have AORs, so those are authorized organizational representatives. If you're in a college and that college is submitting your proposal, you have an AOR and you should thank your AOR. They're part of a grants office. Our grants office is at the college. tremendous amount of work and are great partners with the central SRS office, both on the grants and contracts as well as the accounting side. I want to thank the ADR group, the Associate Dean for Research. I see a couple of ADRs here in the room. They've been a great resource, and they're a great team that thinks about research and how to work on things together. The research advisory boards, both the Executive Research Advisory Board that has done its own evaluation of Research 2030 on an annual basis with me, as well as our DEI and Research Advisory Board that was formed a couple of years ago. We have some consultants. We have URC faculty chairs that work closely with us, the Faculty Senate and the Research and Scholarship Committee in particular, and the fellows of the grad school who have always been good partners with the Office of Research and with me in particular. And then I want to thank the board, the executive working group, direct reports, cabinet members, and council of deans, because it is, as the provost said, it's truly a team effort. And then the best team is my team at the Office of Research team. They're not my team, but the Office of Research team, the folks who are over in the Office of Research every day trying to make us better, trying to support all of you, trying to reduce your research burden. And I know it's a challenge out there. I still have my own lab. I still go through it myself, but everybody is involved in trying to make this a better place for all of us to do our research and scholarly activities. So I want to thank everyone for your attention. And then for those of you who are on Zoom, if you have any questions, you may put those into the chat and those will be shared up with me. Anybody here who has questions for either the provost or I, just raise your hand if you're in the room and Tony will be by with a mic. But with that, thank you all again for your participation and for all that you do to support research. Question. Nobody wants to grill the provost? Are you having? Do we have anything online?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
There are a couple. So this one is about research security and classified research. Someone asked about research security becoming of increasing concern to the United States government, and what is UC's plan for supporting international collaboration?
It's a good question. Yet for those who work in these areas or pay attention to what's happening out of Washington, D.C., there certainly has been a big emphasis around research security. We continue to see more. So two things, and I think we have to approach it institutionally in both ways. And the first is we have been investing as part of a research security and ethics unit within the Office of Research. That unit is led by Associate Vice President Holly Banty. But within that, there is a working group that is our committee now that is formed to address the issues institutionally. Are we doing what we need to do to make sure we're meeting the federal guidelines, we're identifying where the federal regulations are going and what we need to do to make sure we're equipped and prepared for that. A lot of those security concerns involve cyber security. So we've actually hired a research cyber specialist in Laura Elkin, who works with the colleges to ensure our compliance in that. And we also are making sure that our facilities can be upgraded to support that. But that's on the compliance side. I think just as important, it's how do we make sure we have the culture we should have as an academic university, that we're open to collaborations, that we're supporting our faculty, and that we're really, for anybody who's going to do a collaboration, we're making sure that those folks are protected and they understand how to do that. That's one of the things Val mentioned, why we have invested in this international partnership with Raj, and Neil Ayers is the executive director of international partnerships over there. And if you need help or you're interested, he is the individual to reach out and how do I collaborate better and what can I do in terms of the international space. No other questions in the room? Any? Oh. How do I do this, Allison?
So I was interested by the Pivot Award. What are your criteria for that award?
So thank you. The URC Pivot, that is primarily geared for what we call mid-career faculty. So you have to be at the late associate or associate, late associate, early full, primarily is what cohort we're looking for. And really, there's two main criteria besides the quality of the work. That is, are you proposing to do something different? One of the things we have data on and we're aware of is that, in fact, faculty sometimes go down a path, they've done that, they've gotten tenure, they do it post-tenure, and then that field has changed and they need to change as well. So how do we help them move into a different direction? So it has to be clear that it's not what you've been doing that got you tenure or you've been doing post-tenure as a faculty member. And the second and important one that we developed in collaboration with the Faculty Senate was we need to make sure that the deans and department heads are on board. So one of the things is you have to have the support of your leadership at the college level to take the time to do this pivot. So that's one of the requirements, is that the college is going to support you in this. For those who it fits in their field, this is sort of modeled a little bit on an NSF program that targets the same thing. And we're hoping that our pivot awardees will become more competitive for the NSF version as well. They'll get a little bit of money to get some preliminary data to go after the NSF award. Mm-hmm. Where's, got a question here in the front.
Thank you, Pat, for the very nice overview. I have a question with respect to the PhD student support. I realize in recent years there are some initiatives in the College of Engineering with some initial support to PhD students coming from some kind of endowment. Can you give us an overview of what kind of big initiatives do we have for the PhD students? And I refer to PhD students specifically because I think that's where we can have significant research output, and also the rankings and our reputation depends a lot on the PhD students and the quality of those students we graduate from our university.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I don't want to put the dean of the graduate college, Tony, you might not go too far on the spot, but as part of Next Lives Here, there are several initiatives. I'll let Rosemary speak to those if you don't mind.
Sure, I don't mind. So I'm Rosemary Ward, Dean of the Graduate College. One of them is the Presidential Fellowship. And so we are looking to recruit our first class of 15 PhD research students, in which they will get $10,000 on top of their stipend from the college. In addition to that, 100% of their health insurance is covered, but it's different than that. So we're trying to be a little bit more innovative. So 50% of their time will be with their research advisor, plus a mentor or graduate alumni mentor, plus somebody either from industry or social justice, somewhere with a social impact. That will comprise their team, and they'll spend 50% of their time developing their project in that. The other 50% of the time will be light classwork. They'll still meet the outcomes of their degree program, but they'll do it not necessarily in the classroom. And so they'll have these kind of grand assignments in which we'll have like Procter & Gamble and other partners that we're building right now come in, and the interdisciplinary team will work to solve and build those transferable skills. So considering of our research doctorates right now, 75% of them do not go into academia. We're trying to re-envision what graduate education looks like at that PhD level to be a little bit more innovative. But I can tell you more about it. That's just a high level overview. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. Yep.
I appreciated, Pat, when you were talking about the non-STEM disciplines, and I wondered if we might explore that a bit more. It sounds like, you know, looking at some of the national, most likely international awards, that those that maybe are not going for big grants, we have a lot of fields that don't play in that space. I happen to be sitting at a table with both two researchers who don't play in that space, but also libraries. We were thinking about, data sets that end up being shared, software that people need to be using in those fields, but they aren't the big grants. Could you talk a little bit about thoughts on how to support that kind of work and how we might also showcase it further?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mayor. I think for me, it has to start at the top. And I've heard this, and for those who don't know my background, I am a professor of chemistry here, so I come out of the STEM areas, and I've heard this since I've been in this role. You saw where I started. You talk about numbers, that's all you care about, right? Numbers are one of the metrics we have to use, that's clear. But the other one is, what other things do we value, and how are we gonna measure the value of those? And that's part of what we want to do in society and culture in that initiative, is really to get to the answers to your question, because I don't know all the right answers to that. I'm not living out in all of those spaces. So that's part of what we would be looking for, is input from you, from your faculty, from other areas to say, this is what is important. This is what we need to do. We actually have different programs that sort of run some ways under the radar that have supported different data sets and access to data sets and things like that. But we can think of, how do we sort of bring those a little bit more into the light so people are aware of them? But what we really want to do is sort of take a look across the institution. And one of the things that makes UC unique is our diversity of our colleges. We run from professional schools, College of Medicine, which clearly does the bulk of the research dollar work here, but all the way to your college, to CCM, to some of our gyms, DAP as well, that are out there doing things that you don't see in those metrics, but that are making a difference. And so that's where we are with this initiative. But specifically, I don't want to get too far down a path and say, well, we're just going to do this, or this, because as you know, with President Pinto, it's all about our directions. So are we going in the right direction? And then what programming do we need to support your success, library success, success in the social sciences, in the arts, and in the humanities? Let me see if are there any online before we go to another?
There is, excuse me. This one is for both the provost and for the VPR, and that is around your diversity, equity, inclusion, and access efforts.
I'll start, and then I'll let you get the microphone to the provost. So in the Office of Research, we started our DEI and Research Initiative as part of Research 2030. If you're not aware, so it's a sort of, we have three components to that initiative. The first is we have a DEI and Research Advisory Council. Important to us is we think of research in the broadest sense and DEI and research in the broadest sense. So how do we support all types of folks who want to do research? That's really what this is. How do we make it inclusive and accessible to all? And that's part of what this council has been charged with by me and has been looking at, is what are some of the barriers to research success? To be honest, and I'm not saying it just because Heidi Pettijohn is in the room, but if you're disabled and you want to do research, if you're physically disabled, it's very challenging around this campus. So what can we do? What can we learn? How can we improve on things like that? As part of what the DEI and Research Advisory Council does, is it also helps put together, Jennifer Kravickas is the editor of it, but we have a DEI and Research Digest that goes out every other month, and you could subscribe and get that. That's where we share out best practices. We have one of our council members who speak to their own experiences in this space, and we also provide resources for those who are interested in doing research around the DEI space. And then we've also had a DEI and Research Fellow. So this past year, it was Ty Collins. He was more than a year. So Ty is a professor in CECH in Larry's college, and he helped us accumulate a rigorous and very extremely well validated data set on who are our faculty or our researchers, what are their demographics, do we see any areas of sort of concern that certain groups are not as successful, can we develop programming around that? And we're going to take that data and build out on top of that for specific programming as part of our DEI and research initiative. So Val, I think, yeah.
Yeah, so, well, we don't focus only on research, but certainly one of the things that we focus in the Provost office is how are we ensuring that we have an inclusive philosophy about how we go about both hiring and then supporting faculty, students, and staff. So if many of you may remember that about 3 years ago, the Provost convened a D&I task force. I'm actually in the process of reviewing all of the initiatives on that task force recommendations with focus groups of staff, faculty, students, and obviously with the deans. Among the initiatives there that can actually relate to what we're talking about here are a few that pertain to the hiring of faculty. So we do have a strategic hiring initiative that it's also a dual career initiative that is run out of the Vice Provost for faculty advancement. And that has seen a significant increase in terms of participation, in part because our faculty, our search committees are being now more intentional about the way they hire for their disciplines. And as you might imagine, inclusivity in those spheres really runs the gamut, because what might be considered inclusive in one unit could be very different from what is inclusive in a different unit. So just to give you a number, last year, there were 28 of those hires done across the board. The average in the preceding years had been 10, 11. This year, we're up to about 14, 15, and we're still in the hiring cycle. So that shows an uptick. We also started a postdoc program, which is a 2-year postdoc that we are awarding for sort of underrepresented groups in different disciplines. I think this past year, now I'm going to get it wrong. I know one was in arts and sciences, and the other one may be in CCM. There we go. Sort of. See, I have good people in the background that give me this information. So we are looking across the board for those things. We also are trying to create a partnership with the regional HBCUs to ensure that if they have good students coming out of their programs, they can find a fertile place to possibly move into graduate programs here. Obviously, we need to do a better job of listening to what they need, what their needs are. So we are building those relationships. But as I said, there's a lot of them, and we continue to look to improve on those as we move forward. And as I said, I think I have 2 more focus groups set up before we can actually republish them. They're actually available. They're on a dashboard. We also include in those support of staff and the ERGs. ERGs are supported out of the faculty advancement group. So we have numerous activities. In research, obviously, we work a lot in partnership with Pat and making sure that when there are opportunities, and you haven't mentioned the first grant, but the first grant is one of the big grants that we have just put in, and we're still waiting on the outcome, but that's certainly a big support for research and DNI.
I think we have one.
And that queued me up perfectly. Hi, I'm Danielle Bissett from Sociology. And this is actually for both Pat and Val. One of the greatest threats to research generally, and I think certainly to talent acquisition, is the threat to academic freedom that we see nationally, but also here in the state of Ohio. I wonder if you could comment on what you're doing within the university to protect academic freedom, including actually these DEI initiatives, as well as sort of any outward educational activities that are going on in order to ensure that we can bring and retain the best researchers here in Cincinnati, and also that we can continue to do the great work that we want to do.
Yeah, Danielle, great question. I think I'll let Val take a lot of it because, you know, well, it's unfortunate, right? It is the world we live in right now, and I know Val is living it, just given what we've seen come out of the state legislature as a proposal. I will say this from the research side. There are, fortunately, relatively few threats on the academic freedom around the research that folks do. But when they come to our attention, our goal is to support the researcher, right? And so that's how we approach all of this. We have a faculty member who's actually leads one of the labs that's in the building who encountered some of these difficulties. And it's not always a government difficulty. It can be the mob that's out there after them based on what they're doing. And so part of what you saw is we have some consultants. We work with some consultants who can help understand how do we approach this. I don't think it's a surprise for any of us. The social media that can all of a sudden become a snowball. What can we do to help? So we put some of that in place to help them. And then we also try to help through sort of our normal approaches around sort of what can we do as a research office to help the faculty navigate some of those minefields that might be out there. But in the broader context of, you know, the bigger threats to academic freedom, I think it's certainly the academic side of the house is facing this. And I don't know if you had anything you wanted to say, Val, or.
So I don't have anything to, no, I'm joking, but no, I think one of the things that is obviously on everybody's mind is sort of looking at what is currently being proposed in Columbus. But I think we need to read this information. We need to find out what it says. We need to also see where, in fact, it it affects us. But I also think we need to think broadly about what it means to be an inclusive environment, and think about how inclusive excellence can be defined to be both broad and narrow. Because I think if we do that, then we're going to have a little bit more, ability to say what we need to say in order to protect our research. And I think, I don't want to speak out of place, but I think we are in the process of evaluation, so we can't really say. I mean, I myself have read the materials. There are certain things that in the material require further investigation with regards to what we talk about at the level of the state. But I don't want to make an affirmation right now of certain things that we are going to go to defend or not, because I'm not the one who can speak on behalf of everybody. Certainly on the academic side, I want to make sure that the rights of faculty to be able to do their research are respected. So that's something that we will be talking about as we move forward.
I think we have time for maybe one more online, and if there's one more in. So is there any more? All good? Okay. Any more in the room? Oh, one more.
I'm going to ask a really hard question. It's actually, I'm Gordon Gillespie from College of Nursing, and it's more also just a response to the prior question about what is done to protect academic freedom. And personally, I'm going through a grant now that has state funding, and they're sanctioning our dissemination of the grant, and we have a contract that allows that. So we're kind of stuck with, we developed a product which is about inclusion within healthcare, and the state funder is actually sanctioning that. But what I've learned from other grants and contracts I've had through UC is the Office of General Counsel and the Office of Research, they're very good about not signing any agreement that has any sanctions. And this is probably like the one exception, and we're kind of learning from that. But I have learned that when I've had my own contracts and the funder wants to say, we want to have the right to stop your dissemination or review all of your findings first, General Counsel and Research says they won't sign any contract that has that language, which is, I think, is a great way to protect academic freedom. Of course, this one grant, there's a problem with it, but otherwise, I think they're really consistent to protect academic freedom.
That's a good point, Gordon. And maybe I'll just clarify or expand upon that real quickly and then let everybody get on with their day. We do have a process in place, as Gordon says, whenever we're accepting any awards, that unless the faculty wish to waive certain rights, we as a university will not waive those for you. We will negotiate with the sponsor, and if the faculty say, no, I don't want to waive these rights, then we will, sometimes figure out a mutually acceptable conclusion, or sometimes, you have to let the sponsor go because of their stipulations. But we're also building sort of that infrastructure to help faculty understand. We have faculty who work in areas where by nature it's proprietary or confidential or special restricted information. So that's part of this research security group as well, is to help educate faculty to understand what that means to protect them as well as the university. So it does go both ways, in terms of what does that mean. Ultimately, as much as we can, we want to put that in the hands of the faculty member and support their decision when it's within the scope of what we do and within the Ohio Revised Code. So with that, I want to thank all who were here in person, as well as all who are attending online. Thank you so much. Go to research.uc.edu to see more about Research Week activities.
One of the things that the last few years via the president have certainly underscored is the impact, but also the desire that we have to increase and make our research more prominent and make sure that our faculty have the tools to do what they need to do to be successful. I supervise the academic affairs side of the house, but academic affairs and research need to work closely together in order for the university to advance in the scope of what the president wants to do. And so let me come back to the whole idea of Next Lives Here and what this building really represents, which is Neville's desire to make sure that we are impactful, not only as a university within this municipal sphere, but nationally and internationally. And I think Next Lives Here in this new phase, which this building, Digital Futures, I believe launched, even though as Ryan might have something to say about 1819 and innovation, but I do think that this building really has launched the next phase of our research project. And in fact, Neville has called this the next acceleration phase. And if you look at the next acceleration phase in Next Lives Here and the new pathways that are in there, what you'll find is that almost all of them are around research. You look at bioeconomy and bioinformatics, you look at society and culture, you look at digital transformation, you look at the next graduate scholars and the urban health, with especially the desire to hit the National Cancer Institute designation. Those are all really focused on how do we grow the impact that you, the faculty, and you, the administrators that lead our colleges, can have on the future. So from my perspective, you've heard me a lot talking about the sort of elements that in fact come from the first phase, the Faculty Enrichment Center, the faculty, the student success, the growth of our retention and graduation. But the two are interconnected. We can only get there if we have devoted and good research faculty that heighten the value of the instruction and the education that we give to our students. And by giving that surplus to our students, we're actually preparing them to be successful, not only in careers that are outside of academia, but for those who choose to follow, many of us, the success that we can have in academia. So I want to just thank all of you who devote so much time to making sure that those two aspects of our mandate get fed constantly and well throughout the academic years that you spend doing research, doing teaching, and doing pedagogy. I will say one thing for my side of the house, and I mean it, my side of the house, academic affairs. The partnerships that I'm starting to see develop via research are really attached to what I call the faculty advancement that we do within academic affairs. And one of those is, which I think is starting to bridge that gap, is the recently launched Institute for Post-Secondary Learning Research, which really ties both our pedagogical and our research work. We have been starting to hire faculty, research faculty into our colleges, into our units that help us advance how we do pedagogical work so that in fact, in our classrooms, we can develop the best techniques. And this is where that marriage really shows to me how we can't disconnect the two. So please keep on looking for these scholars who are going to be coming to your colleges, asking to work with you to improve the status of our pedagogical delivery and help them out, because that's something that, in my view, will heighten even more the work of this university. But let me come back to this place and what Pat does. I want to commend Pat, and now there you are. I'm looking for him, but I can't find him. So I want to commend Pat for really having worked collaboratively with me, with the deans, in getting some of the teams here started, but also continuing to support many of the other activities, such as the awards, such as the development of junior faculty. That's really important. The mentoring of the new faculty that can come in here and find a very well-developed program, which he does. The other thing that Pat has done with me is we have worked to embed people from his shop into some of the things that we do. For example, we have Sarah, now I'm going to get her name wrong, Sarah Clift. She is now working in the Faculty Enrichment Center, making sure that there is programming there that addresses faculty research. We also have Neil Ayers, who is now working with our international offices to ensure that faculty who have international research programs can actually find partners out there. I have been lucky to travel to 4 different places in the last few months where that is one of the priorities that foreign universities want. They want to work with our researchers. And Dion, who's here, knows, because I've often talked with him about what we need to do in Greece, for example. But those are the kind of partnerships that Pat has enabled. And that's what's going to make us better. That's what's going to make us even more important, as I said, internationally. And it will keep on growing the reputation of this institution. We have to keep on investing here. And I also would be remiss if I didn't say that much of the investment comes from the work that you as faculty put in, to writing grants, to finding support, to looking for partners outside of this university and inside this university to develop new programs that address really important issues of this day and age. So thank you, Pat. Thank you, Pat, for your partnership. Thank you for all of you for being here. And I'm happy to take whatever answers I can, but I will always redirect to Pat when I'm in doubt. So having said that, again, thank you for coming here. And Pat, I think the microphone goes back to you.
Thank you, Val. Well, I want to reiterate what the provost said. In fact, when I took this role in 2016 and then President Pinto started in 2017, one of the things he said is, to be successful, the provost and the VP for research need to have a tight partnership. And I had the pleasure of having that with the previous provost and now the current provost. You can't advance this university without both sides, the academic side and the research side, working in partnership and in alignment with where we're trying to go. And that also holds for what we're trying to do beyond the university. And one of the things, I'll just start a little bit off script here, is there's a reason we're in Digital Futures and it's here in the Innovation District, because that's part of what's next. Being right across the street from 1819 is another important strategic goal of the university and how we advance and move forward.